What red flags about a company have you encountered while interviewing for a job? Serious. Number of contractors to employees ratio. Also, specific keywords such as unlimited potential income or this is not a scam. Extremely high turnover or you are being interviewed by people who have worked in their department for 1 year. It took me a long time into my career to trust my instincts on these red flags. 1. When you are going to be reporting to more than one person department. 2. Super condescending attitudes on behalf of the interviewer. 3. I work in IT and I had a manager ask me once what I would do if I knew that restarting the system was not going to fix the problem and might make it worse, but he would tell me to restart it anyway or find a new job. I told him, if it's going to make things worse, I'm not going to restart the system regardless of what you tell me to. I ended up getting the job, but that question actually turned out to be a huge red flag. He tried to pull crap like that all the time. 4. If I can't stand someone's personality in a short interview, I'm not going to be able to stand working for them. Interviewer, how do you handle conflict? Such as, if you work with someone who might yell a lot. Me, well, I don't think anyone should yell at someone while working. Interviewer, your direct report has a history of being passionate about his work. Oftentimes he raises his voice and it might make people uncomfortable. Red flag, run. Last interview I went to, they told me they were going to be bigger than Facebook. The company had 6 FB likes and a webpage smothered with errors and got angry at me when I suggested some easy 1-minute steps to fix them. It was for a tech company. So, how's the work-life balance here? Laughter. Right after I graduated I interviewed for an entry-level data entry admin position. They offered to hire me if I paid them $750 to complete their training course. Oh boy, interviewer had me stand against a wall while he rated me on my wardrobe. Father-son operation. The two interviewed me, argued a bit over stuff in front of me. Employee manual of one company. I don't know why they gave it to me at the interview but they did. When the employee is no longer useful to the company, the employee and company must part ways. Italian firm getting started in the US. The interviewer actually excused himself to go fondle the secretary. Googling the firm netted a few links to OSHA violations and deaths. Facebook page of one employee talking about his life on an oil derrick in the Gulf of Mexico. Travel percentage kept changing wildly in the interview. Panel interview. A few folks got up one stroke two-way through. Very vague questions about qualifications. Mostly about me. Generic skills test and then a disc assessment. This is a 110% job. You'll be expected to also work at least 2 weekends a month. I'm encountering a series of red flags right now. So far I've had 5 rounds. Yes, 5 of interviews for a mid-level managerial job, all but 1 of which were rescheduled by the company at the last minute due to conflicts with the various interviewers. I finally reached the final round with a senior executive a couple of days ago, only to have that person show up in an annoyed huff and announce they had only just now received my resume. They then went on to say, and I quote, "I don't even know why they're considering you for this role." They then followed up with this gem, "Which one of our offices is this for again?" Needless to say, after all that rigmarole, I plan on turning down the offer if they send one. We work hard and play hard. Bulls. You just work hard and have awkward social get-togethers at most once a month. This isn't Wall Street. All that's going to happen is that you're going to make me work 60 hours a week because of this mentality. Interview at a landscaping company. I commented on how nice all the plants were and said what a relaxing environment the office must be. The interviewer laughed nervously and said, "It's not, really." Then I met the boss and was talking about how I worked well with my past managers and he said, "And what if your manager is a difficult person who yells a lot?" He was referring to himself and I knew it. But I was desperate and needed the job. Luckily I left after 3 months. I had a boss describe himself as sometimes acting a little bipolar, not to mention his wife worked for him so they would have screaming matches from their offices and be really passive aggressive. So glad to not be there anymore. Anyone who asks how you handle someone who's bipolar or yell a lot is a huge freaking red flag. During an interview, my future boss mentioned that my predecessors flaked out after a day and 2 weeks, respectively. Turns out, they didn't flake. He's just a massive butthole. I lasted 5 months. Went for a marketing executive role, turned up the office was almost totally bare except for 8 or 9 mismatched chairs. We were called into a side office for interview. The central heating wasn't working so the interviewer was wearing gloves and a winter jacket. When he mentioned it was commission only pay I walked straight out. Beware the Cobra Group, they are just charity fundraisers who give their jobs outrageously misleading titles like marketing executive. Being left waiting for half an hour for the interviewer, I picked up my bag and walked out. I once caused a red flag for a person being interviewed. I worked at an IT help desk for a retail chain, and the people who called in could get pretty abusive on the phone. A new guy was being interviewed for the help desk team in a cubicle next to me, and I was on with a particularly abusive caller, so I turned up the volume loud enough so he could hear her cussing me the whole time. I didn't overhear the whole interview, but I know he declined their offer. Of course from his end, that was a huge red flag. He's watching me do the job he'll soon be doing, and getting cussed and abused the whole time. It was my way of saying get out while you can. I saw one of those ads that said work for students, $15 HR or something. I called the number and set up an interview. Should have known not to interview for a job you don't have to apply for. I got there and it was this crappy building downtown with flickering fluorescent lights. They brought me to a room not unlike a doctor's waiting room where several other people sat filling out papers. I was skeptical but needed a job so I started filling out my paperwork. When I flipped the page over, I finally saw the name of the company I was applying to, Vector Marketing. I only knew about them because a friend of mine sold Cutco knives for a while. I crumpled up the paper and left without a word. Well, initially you'll be a contractor but there's opportunities for full-time employment in the future. Question: what kind of workload can I expect on the average week? I've heard horror stories of 80-hour work weeks at big companies. Answer: let's not beat around the bush. All companies expect a 50-60 hour week. They don't say they do, but they do. Got right out of there. I'm very happy at my current job that doesn't even require me to answer emails outside of the 40 hours I work. I think in any interview you want to ask questions about the company when it comes time for you to ask questions. 1. You want to specifically ask about the culture. Ask the interviewer what they think about the culture. 2. Ask what kind of turnaround the company has. Low turnover probably means a good environment. 3. Ask the interviewer what they like most about working at the company. Pay attention to their body language and their answer. They're probably not going to be honest if they hate it, but you might be able to tell. If they tell you they don't like it, that's a huge red flag. When I was first looking into an office IT position, I was on an interview when someone knocked on the office door, asked a question and left. After he left, the interviewer told me that's the person we're going to fire when you get this job. Gave me a bad vibe, so I turned down the offer when I got it. Joke of an offer too. $21K. I was making $40K a year working in retail. Things I've encountered: bad-mouthing other applicants, not by name, but still not cool. Didn't even look at your resume before they offered you an interview. Then mentioning they didn't even look at your resume before giving you an interview. Offered you an interview, again before they even looked at your resume, for a position you don't have experience or skills in. The good old gem. The pay sucks and the hours are long, but the work is great. Bad-mouthing other facilities or businesses in the same field. Group interviews where you're expected to give your answer in front of 8-9 other candidates. I've probably encountered other red flags, but these were the ones which stuck out the most for me. A thing called knowledge fishing. I interviewed for a building company in the UK for a marketing executive. They wanted to branch into residential builds from large commercial work, but the marketing manager said they had no idea how to go about it at that stage. Well, I went through the interview process and did my best. Then I got a message from them a week later that I was through to the next stage. However, they wanted me to give them a full presentation of what I think their whole marketing strategy should be for every area, including social media and online marketing, and they wanted a full hour on each part. They ended the letter by saying, "Don't worry, we have a marketing plan. We just want to see if your thoughts are similar to ours." Ding ding ding. Bigger red flag than at the end of the first ACT of Les Miserables. It's worth reiterating this was for a marketing executive, not a marketing director or anything huge like that. I told them I wasn't interested and left it at that. It was pretty obvious they wanted my input to make their marketing proposal, rather than to offer an actual job, especially as their letter stated something completely different to what the manager had told me. I know that this was a knowledge fishing job too, as I was talking to another agency about this and they told me that they've barred this company from working with them for doing exactly this before. Your job entails this, and several other tasks we'll get to once you've started. Pre-interview. But if a company's website is tailored towards recruiting new employees way more than it is towards the clients, it's a bad sign. A real, reputable company that is making money wants their website to be client-facing first, and have a tab or link somewhere for careers for those who are interested. If 50% or more of the main landing page is catered towards selling you on why they're such a good career choice, it's either a scam, B, a meat grinder business where turnover is extremely high, or C, a company that has no idea what it's doing. Yesterday I was filling out an application to become a part-time tutor at a prison. I had to fill out a 100-question multiple choice assessment. Some of the questions: how much coke do you do? How much money do you steal from your employer? How much money do you think it is okay to steal? How much money do you think the average person steals from their employer? How often do you come to work under the influence of marijuana? How often do you come to work under the influence of coke? How often do you sexually harass your co-workers? On and on this went for 100 questions. By the end I was thinking of putting down often 5 times a week for how often I used LSD at work. Not sure this is a red flag so much as just to screen out the people too stupid to not know what the correct answers are. A lot of retail environments use assessments that are less blunt but still are trying to get people that will brown nose and report other employees' misconduct. Any marketing job where they want you to use your own network of social contacts to sell their product. When you show up for an interview for an internship as a 20-year-old woman and are greeted by a 45-plus-year-old man who doesn't ask you any questions, but instead gives you a bunch of articles and photographs about his bodybuilding career when he was younger. He just seemed too sketchy. Called 2 days later and left a message saying I was hired. I don't even know what he was hiring me for and I never contacted him again. That whole situation seemed like a red flag. Sales targets so high they were apparently established during her LSD experience. I was once doing whiteboard code during an interview, and one of the guys called me out for a syntax error, not a logical error. When I said, a compiler would catch it, he started giving me crap for my attitude and lack of professionalism. Actually ended up walking out of that one. I was at another place, and the CEO was sitting in on the interview, asking these weird philosophical questions. Now, it's not a small company, several hundred employees, and I was interviewing for a job several levels of management below the CEO. But he's still in the interview, cutting off the guy who is doing most of the interview, and telling me my answers aren't the answers he's looking for. Frick that crap. Also interviewed one time with this place in New York who told me that, if I was hired, they expected me to learn to use my mouse with my left hand because an efficiency expert had told them that was better. I used to do COBOL back in the 90s, and moving into the 2000s I started noping out of interviews where the interviewer would say, casually, "So, you know COBOL?" More than once I got a job that had almost no COBOL and found out that my desk was next to a mainframe full of the most horrible code imaginable, and that they had a list of COBOL projects at least 5 years long. Having to come back for an interview over and over and over and over again, first a headhunter agency, then HR, then regional managers, then sales managers, then team managers, and all of them asking the exact same questions. What a waste of time that was. After interview number 5 they wanted to schedule number 6 and I told them enough is enough. Had an interview with one of those predatory loan companies. After giving a brief explanation of how crappy the loans are, the interviewer asked, "Do you have any moral objections to working here?" If you have to ask, that's probably a bad sign. I noped right out of there. If you get hired because a bunch of employees quit at once, that's a bad sign. They won't disclose the salary range before setting up an interview. No disclosure? No way I am going to even waste my time talking to you. Seriously, the only reason they aren't disclosing it is because they know they are grossly underpaying for the position and no one who is actually qualified will submit a resume for such crap pay. I learned, by doing some investigation, that another company was interested in buying them out. If so, the job I was applying for would be moved halfway across the country. Thus, if offered the position, I might have to uproot and move shortly after beginning. The more the interviewer tried to downplay and sidestep this important fact, the more I became convinced that I didn't want to be part of it. On finding out who had your job previously, avoid any of the following. 15 people in the past 2 years. 1 person for the past 20 years. They will hate you either way, and you will come to hate them. If they ask you to pay a single cent for anything, you are being scammed. No legitimate job I've had has ever required me to pay for anything necessary to do my job. Interviewer is late to the interview. If they don't respect you now, wait until you're working for them. We pay for 38 hours a week, but we expect at least 55 hours as a show of faith and loyalty. We guarantee you at least minimum wage. Our clients come first, so it is a condition that if required, you cancel leave if directed and attend work. With that last one I asked for clarification and was told that if I was about to step on a plane and they called, I was to forfeit my plane ticket and hotel bookings and go to work. That wasn't even the worst stuff. The only time I've ever lost my temper with an interviewer. When I went to their website, there were way too many statements in large bold font about how much money you can make with few credentials. Our top performers make over 100k a year. No college degree required. Sign up now. One question I always ask the interviewers is, if you had a magic wand and change anything about the company, what would you change? Biggest red flag for me is when different interviewers give the opposite answer. No way do I want to join a company in the middle of a turf war. After completing the initial interview, I did some research. Apparently the dental company I was interviewing for was owned by Scientologists and required their employees to attend mandatory Scientology classes. Also, they made me take an IQ test, which was wholly unlike any IQ I've ever taken before. If anyone's curious, the company is Brightside Dental. Went for a marketing company which was selling bulls door to door. Not my style, and the ad online lied. Not to mention the man interviewing me was my age, 20s, and flirted with me. Asked me if I had a boyfriend and how long I was with him, if we lived together, etc. Very creepy and unprofessional. Desperate for a job, I reluctantly agreed to try one day to see what it was like. When he called the next day, I immediately declined. Horrid, unprofessional, creepy, worst experience ever. Interview was rescheduled twice, and once I actually got to the interview, I found the office was a mess and everything was completely disorganized, and during the interview the phone rang at least 3 times and my interviewer stopped the interview each time to answer the phone in order to give people directions or information about applying for positions. Had it not been for the phone calls, our interview would have lasted a minute, as she pretty much asked me 3 questions and then wanted to schedule me for a follow-up with someone else another day. Ridiculous. On top of all that, my interviewer was basically the secretary, and practically fresh out of college, and seemed in way over her head. Then, to top it all off, the position turned out to be temp to perm, and it wasn't even the same position I applied for. They had several different positions to fill in different departments, and when I said I intended to apply for the one advertised, she shrugged. Had an interview scheduled for what sounded like a job I am well qualified for. The day before the interview I drove out to the business to see it. It has no signage, was old and in a rundown industrial area. I cancelled on some BS excuse. Didn't have the heart to tell them what I thought of the place. And another potential MIB recruit falls at the first hurdle. You have been visited by the grandmother gymnast comment, my body is my temple, so you can do that when you're old. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.